Good morning. The Senate Aging Committee this hearing will come to order for the Senate Aging Committee. We're grateful that everyone is here to talk about these issues. I'm really grateful that our witnesses are here this morning and grateful for those who are in attendance. Today's hearing highlights the experiences of Pennsylvanians who are able account owners and who wish to open an able account but cannot do so. So we're focused on both those who have able accounts as well as those who would like to open an able account but are limited because of the constraints of the law. The original legislation in 2014, the Stephen Beck Jr. Achieving a Better Life Experience Act, we shorten that to ABLE Act, was signed into law in December of 2014. I introduced the ABLE Act to provide people with disabilities the opportunity to build wealth without risking the loss of their federal disability benefits. This is especially important for people with disabilities who have a poverty rate more than twice that of those who don't have a disability. So the poverty rate is twice that for people with disabilities as those who are not. That means that 1 in 4 of the 61 million people with disability in the United States live in poverty. 1 in 4. One of the reasons for this is that federal programs limit the amount of money that people with disabilities can save. This means a person cannot save for a home, they cannot purchase a needed assistive technology, or even save for a car that would be accessible to them. That's why we created ABLE in the beginning, meaning back in 2014, to knock down a barrier that people with disabilities face every day as they work to improve their lives. So far, 46 states and the District of Columbia have used the ABLE Act to create special savings accounts that enable people with disabilities to receive federal benefits, or to use an ABLE account to enable people with disabilities receiving federal benefits to save, like every other American is able to save. Here in Pennsylvania, as of August the 5th, there are more than 6,750 ABLE account owners who have saved nearly $74 million. Those nearly 7,000 Pennsylvanians have been able to, on average, save nearly $11,000 per account. Because of ABLE, people with disabilities can save for education, they can save to start a business, they can save to buy a home, or even save for retirement. But there are limits on who can open an ABLE account. A person with a disability must have acquired their disability prior to their 26th birthday in order to open an ABLE account. That's a limitation that we have to change. There are millions of Americans who acquire their disability later in life. They may acquire the disability after the age of 26. It might be when they're age 30 or 35 or 40. And we want to make sure that we're providing this opportunity for as many Americans as possible. So I introduced a bill, the ABLE Age Adjustment Act. It's Senate Bill 331. And this bill would increase the age of eligibility to own an ABLE account to age 46 instead of 26. This would make 6.2 million more Americans eligible to open an ABLE account, including in that 6.2 million, 1 million veterans. This bill was recently voted out of the Senate Finance Committee, and I'm fighting every day to make sure it's the law. I hope we can pass this, and we're going to try as best we can to get it passed by the end of this calendar year. So today we're gathered to hear more about why Pennsylvania families need ABLE and why we have to expand it. So let me turn to our witnesses. I'll just provide ever so brief introductions of our witnesses, but we're so grateful they're here, willing to testify, share their experience, and to enlighten us and educate us about what we've got to do next. Our first witness is Ms. Brenda Dare. Ms. Dare has experience as a community advocate and artist. She opened her ABLE account in March of 2021 and is a supporter of the program for sure. I want to thank Ms. Dare for being here and look forward to your testimony. Our second witness is Colton Vasquez. Colton is a senior at Duquesne University where he studies performing arts. He's the mascot for the Pittsburgh Thunderbirds, a welcome director at Open Up Yoga Studio, and one of Kenny's Kangaroos at Kennywood Amusement Park. I want to thank Mr. Vasquez for sharing his story with us today. Our third witness is Ms. Carrie Bach, who's currently the Chief Operations Officer at Voices for Independence in Erie, Pennsylvania. In addition to her work at Voices for Independence, she also spent 15 years working for the Pennsylvania General Assembly, the Pennsylvania legislature. Ms. Bach, I look forward to hearing your testimony as well. Our fourth and final witness is Andrew Duch. Mr. Duch has worked at Giant Eagle for 9 years. He will tell us about a major purchase he made with ABLE account funds that has helped increase his personal independence. Mr. Duch, thank you for sharing your story with us today and being with us. So we'll start with our first witness, Ms. Dare. You may begin your testimony.
Thank you, Senator. Good morning to everyone that is here with me today. I'd like to tell you a little bit about a historical perspective. I am nearly 50 years old. I grew up with my disability. I've had it since birth. And being a person who grew up with a disability, I was taught to have a very different attitude about finances and money than most of you in this room. While wealth is something that you aspire to, excuse me, it is something that I was taught to fear. Most kids welcome birthday cards and eagerly take the money out of them to put into their piggy bank. Friends and family were cautioned not to put money in my birthday cards and Christmas stockings, as it would have to be reported and might affect the next month's SSI check. When I turned 16, I was thrilled at the possibility of gaining a little more independence from my mother and my family. I said, it's time to get a job. There was a grocery store within walking distance of my house, and the manager, Henry, had agreed he would teach me how to use a pricing gun so that I could work in stock. My mother's response was absolutely not. She knew nothing of work incentives or Social Security programs that might have enabled me to get a job. She was deathly afraid that if I earned a paycheck, it would negatively impact the small benefit that we needed to keep the house in running order. It was seen as my responsibility to forego that little bit of independence and wealth to help the family. This had a major impact on how I felt about wealth. I developed the attitude that I just wasn't going to own anything. That meant that when I did leave college at the age of 21, I didn't have any practical work experience. And so when I went for my first job, I ended up getting a part-time job at a disability organization that held a 14C certificate. For those of you that don't know what that is, it enables employers to pay less than minimum wage to people with disabilities simply because they have a disability. I was grateful for that money, but I sure didn't know what to do with it. I'd gone through a cycle in college where I'd gotten the predatory credit offers that come to all new 18-year-olds who are away at college, and I had overspent on that shiny new credit card just as soon as I got it. So I was already digging myself out of a hole. And that $5 an hour job helped a little, but not much. I really didn't see how I was going to get ahead in the world. Well, then I began to know that there were ways around those things. By that time, I was receiving SSDI on my father's record because he had become disabled as well. So I had a little bit more money coming in. And when I say a little, I think the difference between my SSI benefit and my SSDI benefit was $17. But that $17 meant that I had lost my Medicaid while I was in the waiting period. So what discretionary income I did have from that little job and the one that followed, I spent on medical expenses to deal with the minor infections that are part of my everyday life. I sure didn't see a way to financial success. The only savings I had existed in a water cooler bottle because as a person with a disability, getting to the bank was difficult. Using bank machines was even more difficult because we hadn't reached a point where, although the ADA was passed, access was minimal. So I really didn't know what my financial future was going to be. Well, I made a mistake on my taxes one year and got a little further behind that financial 8 ball. And I just accepted the fact that I was going to live in lower middle class for all of my life. And I wasn't going to own anything. I was going to be an apartment renter. And I was going to live moment to moment. I remember a very telling argument with my mother. There was a Starbucks across the street from where I lived, and any of you who know me well know that I don't go anywhere without a coffee cup. Well, I was a regular customer, sometimes 3 or 4 times a day. My mother and I were arguing one day. She said, "You spend hundreds of dollars a month on coffee. Imagine what you could do with that money." And I looked at her and I said, "Not much if I don't want to lose my federal home and community-based services benefit. That has an income cap too." I lived my whole adult life in a fair market apartment where I spent 75% of my income some years on rent and utilities because I didn't want to live in public housing. Not because of any shame or stigma attached to it, but because I didn't want yet another financial review. I had spent my entire childhood deathly afraid of the Social Security envelope that came every year to trigger our annual service review, where my mother would, when I was a child, carry me on her hip to prove I was still disabled and prove we needed the money. Wealth was certainly not in my future, though I did dream of hitting the lottery and bought tickets once in a while. When I heard about the full-time job I eventually got with the Center for Independent Living, I started to learn a little bit more about what I could have. I started to learn there were people that knew how to use work incentives and other things that the Social Security Administration offered. And I learned about something called the PASS program, which, if you haven't heard of that, it's exactly what you should do with that opportunity. It is a tremendous amount of work for a terribly constrained program that never did function efficiently and forced people with disabilities to come up with a goal before they knew, before they saved the money, they had to know what they were saving it for. ABLE gives us a way around that. ABLE gives us a way to be fully functioning citizens who are able to save and prepare for futures. I'm now raising my 8-year-old niece, living in a home full of love and security. And when I had to quit my job 6 months ago, ABLE gave me the cushion to be able to do that. I want other people to realize how powerful this program is, and I want more people to be able to take advantage of it through the Age Adjustment Act and through what I hope we can establish, a program where account holders serve as mentors to people who want to become involved in the process. I want to help Senator Casey make these changes, and I know that all my other fellow witnesses do too. Thank you.
Ms. Deere, thanks so much for your testimony and the comprehensive story you told about your own life and how it's been improved
You're
by
welcome.
the ABLE Act. So we're grateful. And that's about as good a summation of why we need to not only keep what's in place growing and moving in the right direction, but also to make the changes we have to make to improve it. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Next, we'll hear from Mr. Vasquez. You may begin your testimony.
Ready? Good morning, Leslie.
Good morning, Senator Casey.
My name is Colton Vasquez. 23 years old. Cassie.
I said, where do you live? Where do you live?
I live Pittsburgh. Um, I vote,
You vote in every election.
vote for president. And, I'm singer, at the Kane.
You're senior at Duquesne University.
Yes. Thank you.
What are you here to talk about?
Uh, uh, um, my account, uh, um, my credit card,
So you're here to talk about your ABLE account and how you
new
use it?
account.
Okay, and why it's important to you, right?
Yep. And, I work, um, at Open Up, and, Kenwood, Jennifer's, and, Casa Camp,
So you had 4 jobs this summer.
push-ups, December.
Do you love to work?
Yes,
Say that.
yes.
Colton loves to work and make money.
Uh-huh.
What are you studying at Duquesne?
I study, um, um, history, theater, and acting.
History of theater and acting. Would you like some help with that one? I travel to different cities to audition for theater jobs. I have to save money to pay for it.
Um,
Where did you go this summer to audition?
uh, um, Florida, um, Sesame Street Live,
So you went to Florida to audition for Sesame Street Live.
Harry Potter.
Yes, you did go to Harry Potter also. What's your dream?
My dream job, dream job, um, Legos, and, um, um, become Lego.
So Colton's dream job is to become a wiggle and perform for kids. What are you saving your money for now?
Seven money at Australia.
He's saving his money to go to Australia.
Wow.
And, I was on days last year. Um, um, Legos inside my ukulele. And, um, um, uh, uh,
Colton had the opportunity to perform with the Wiggles when they were in Pittsburgh.
Who's sitting at money?
You must have a way to save money.
And um
You also want to save for what?
um um um, um my own apartment
Your own apartment?
and um 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 my own wedding and my own dog.
You want some help with this one? Okay. All of these things cost money. I have to be able to save money to do this. Without an ABLE account, I'm only allowed to save $2,000. That is not enough to buy a house or a condo. You want that one too? Okay. If you allow me to save money, I can provide many of my own supports. I will always need some help and I must have health insurance, but I am capable and need the chance to save money without being afraid of losing many of my other benefits. Thank you.
What?
Those are later.
Well, Colton, thanks so much for your testimony and for sharing part of your life story with us.
Thank you.
We're grateful.
Thank you.
And you even have a game plan for your career. So that's, I think, more than I did at your age. So you're ahead of where I was at your age. So thanks for sharing that. And your mom Candy's here. I should have introduced you earlier to be with Colton and as his communication supporter. So next, our third witness is Ms. Bach. Thank you for being with us today and look forward to your testimony.
Thank you for having me today.
Sure.
My name is Carrie Bach, and I am living with quadriplegia as a result of a spinal cord injury from an accident that occurred on November 3rd, 2019. I was 41 years old. This accident happened in my own living room when I slipped, broke my neck at the C5, C6 level, which is about in this area, and my life changed forever in the blink of an eye. Prior to my fall, I worked as a professional in an office, just like all of you, but I also had a second career and identity as a professional performer. I'm a classically trained ballerina. However, I realized pretty early on that I was not physically built for a career in ballet. I'm 5'2", and I had a compact, muscular build, which was not exactly what ballet companies were hiring at the time. So instead, I took my training and I focused it on swing dancing, partnered acrobatics, aerial performance, and stilt walking. This allowed me the opportunity to travel around the United States, as well as 33 different countries. I also spent a little time as a competitive bodybuilder. My husband here is also a professional performer too, with talents that far exceed my own. We had both decided that we were going to retire as performers that year. In fact, I finished my final gig 3 weeks before I fell. However, those are all stories for another day. I'm here to talk about November 3rd, 2019, the day both of our lives changed forever and in an instant. We all know that accidents happen every day, and it could be any one of us. I even worked for an organization, Voices for Independence, that assists people with disabilities, but I still never thought it would be me. We plan and save money for vacations, for buying a new car. We plan for our kids' college educations and our retirement, but no one ever makes plans to have a disability. We just don't, even though we know it could happen to any one of us or our loved ones at any moment. When I had my accident, we were both gainfully employed and had retirement accounts set up. I have a state pension plan, which I'm vested in. My husband has a 401k plan, and we both have IRAs. Our income and assets put us above the limit to qualify for most programs assisting people with disabilities. When I was in rehabilitation for my injury at UPMC Mercy Hospital, I remember being told that people with SCIs rarely ever return to work. And if they do, it usually takes 2 to 3 years. I returned to work 3 weeks after I left rehab. I also was told by the social workers that my options for going home were for my husband to quit his job to care for me at home, or I'd have to go to a nursing facility. Luckily, I knew from my years of working with the legislature and BFI that I had other options, and I discharged to my own home. Because of our financial situation and not qualifying for most programs, we immediately amassed a bill over $70,000 to get our home ready for me. This included new flooring that could withstand the wear and tear of my wheelchair, a ramp, accessible bathroom, and a van. We had to wait to install a door opener at the cost of over $6,000. That's right. I could not safely exit my home if I was by myself and a fire broke out. Luckily, we were able to make that investment this year so I can get out of my house. However, the $6,000 investment does not include the daily medical supplies that are not covered by my insurance. The past 2 years, my company has offered a health insurance option for a high deductible health plan with an HSA account. We changed our insurance company this year, and there's no longer the option for an HSA. Like most people, I read through the policy, but I don't yet fully understand how much my medical expenses will cost me this year between different deductibles, copays, co-insurance, or items that are not covered at all. I also no longer have the benefit of a plan that offers me a program with tax benefits for saving money for my medical expenses. I do not have the option of an ABLE savings account with similar tax benefits since I acquired my injury and disability after the age of 26. I would absolutely open an ABLE account for my medical expenses right now if the law allowed for it. I was lucky that I did not sustain a traumatic brain injury when I hit my head. My brain still works even if my body doesn't. I chose to continue working because I can. My husband and I chose not to spend down our resources so that the government would be responsible for paying my care. It would be nice to have the opportunity to open an ABLE account where we would have the same tax benefits as other people with disabilities. Therefore, I urge Congress to pass the ABLE Age Adjustment Act that would change the age requirement to 46 instead of 26 years old for onset of a disability. Thank you for the opportunity to submit my testimony for this hearing today. I hope that you will remember and consider my story if this legislation ever does come before you for a vote. And so I do have to leave you with one last question. Have you made your plans for having a disability? Because today this is my story, but tomorrow it could just as easily be yours. Thank you very much.
Carrie, thanks so much for sharing that. And
You're
we don't mind if I call you by your first name.
That's
And your husband Jeff is helping you provide your testimony. We're grateful you're both
Yes.
here.
Yes, he took off work today to be here with
Oh,
me.
thanks, Jeff, for doing that, helping our hearing. But Carrie, you make the case for why able age adjustment has to get passed.
Correct.
Simple as that.
Mhm.
And now that I know your story, and now that I've been made aware of your legislative experience,
Oh, use me up.
we may
I'm ready.
need to call you.
I think that goes for everybody at this table.
Yeah, to visit some offices.
Yeah.
And we can give you the address of where those offices are.
No problemo.
It's easier to do it in Washington because you can go up and down hallways instead of having to fly from one state to another.
Right, yeah,
But
yeah,
I think
absolutely.
I can get the office numbers for you.
No problem.
Somehow I'll figure that out.
It's very interesting to be on this side of the table
Yeah.
instead of the other side of the table.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's also really helped me be on this side of the table, and I'm happy to do it.
Well, your Harrisburg experience, I'm sure, will help us in Washington.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure they still hear my high heels clicking around those halls.
Well, we're grateful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And our fourth and final witness, Mr. Duch, you may begin.
Thank you for this opportunity to testify before the Senate Special Committee on Aging. My name is Andrew Duch. I live in Gibsonia, Pennsylvania, 15 miles north of Pittsburgh. I'm 27 years old and work in stock for Giant Eagle. I have been working for Giant Eagle for 9 years. I have a great interest in amusement parks, especially roller coasters. I am a coin collector and I enjoy the outdoors. I have lived in the Pittsburgh area for my entire life. Also, I was diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder at the age of 3. I received special education services in school and participated in the marching band in high school. Go Talbots. In 2013, I graduated from Hampton Township School District. I went on to attend Project Search at UPMC Passavant Hospital, where I trained in the linen, pharmacy, and emergency room departments. While I was still in high school, my family and I attended the PA Department of Education's Transition Conference in Hershey, where I learned about PA Able. Since I received benefits like a PFDS waiver and medical assistance, I couldn't have a lot of money in a savings account or I could lose those benefits. So my family and I found out more about PA Able and opened an account. At the same time, I was working part-time at Giant Eagle. I am working a lot more hours now than when I started at Giant Eagle. Some weeks I work 40 or a few more hours. Recently, I also became eligible for health insurance. I was glad that Giant Eagle offered me health insurance because I could not be on my parents' insurance anymore. There are other things that I didn't want to rely on my parents for as an adult, like transportation. I always knew I wanted to learn to drive, but I need a car. So I decided that I would put away money to help buy a car for myself. I used my PA Able account to save money. It's pretty easy to use. When I was still in school and at Project Search, I would use paratransit. It was okay, but there are some challenges to using paratransit. I had to call ahead. Sometimes they were late or too early. Sometimes I had to wait a long time for a ride. When I was 24, I decided it was time to learn to drive. I used the PennDOT app to practice the written test. It took a few tries, but I passed. Then I took driving lessons. In July of 2020, I took my road test and passed on the first try. The next day, my family and I went to look at cars. We knew I might not find something right away. They showed us some and they were okay. But then they showed me a black cherry Honda Civic. I loved the color and I liked how the car looked. It was perfect. Thankfully, I had saved quite a bit of money with my PA Able account and I was able to put down a good amount for a down payment. By putting down more money, my monthly payments and my insurance payments are very manageable. Since I've gotten my license and my car, I am able to drive to and from work. I am able to meet friends at the driving range or my church group, and I don't have to rely on my family to drive me around. If I want to drive to Sheetz for a coffee, I just do it. Using PA Able, I was able to save enough money to buy a car. I am much more independent than I was when I had to use paratransit or rely on my family to drive me somewhere. My car has allowed me to do things I wouldn't have done if I didn't have it, and it gives me independence to do what I want. Now I am saving so that I can live on my own. I am saving for the first and last month's rent for an apartment. PA Able has helped me learn to save money and taught me that by saving, I can get the things I want to live a good life. Thank you.
Well, Andrew, thanks so much for sharing that. And it's just such a specific example of what able can mean for someone's life. Just the ability to save for, in your case, a car, among other savings that you can achieve. So thanks for sharing that. I'll start our questions, and I'll start with I'll come back to Andrew in terms of the order, but I wanted to direct this first question to 3 of our 4 witnesses, to Brendan, Colton, and Andrew, because you have ABLE accounts. When we envisioned these accounts back in 2009, we started working on the legislation, and then it passed in 14. Other senators and I knew that people, and House members as well, we had obviously passed it in both places. We knew that people with disabilities were being denied a chance to save, just as several of our witnesses talked about. We knew that the asset limits for supplemental security income, SSI, and for Medicaid and other federal assistance programs put arbitrary limits on a person's ability to save and therefore limited their future. The asset limits for these federal disability programs are essentially keeping people either close to or living within the poverty rate. Since ABLE accounts have been available, these Americans have been able to save, and each of you have highlighted some of those examples today. So I guess I'm going to start with Brenda, and then maybe Colton, and then Andrew. What's the best thing about having an ABLE account?
The best thing for me about having an ABLE account is that now that I'm not working, it gives me a little bit of financial security and a place to fall back on. One of the things people don't think about, you mentioned assistive technology. I have a lifting system in my home that helps me get out of bed every morning. It costs me about $3,000 a year to maintain that. I can apply to the Office of Vocational Rehab to manage those expenses and pay for them, but that takes months. And sometimes I don't have months if the battery decides to die and I all of a sudden need $1,000 for battery and maintenance. ABLE gives me that cushion. So it's one less thing I have to worry about, because when those emergencies come up or when the brakes went out on my van, I could just write the check, just like anybody else does. It's not scrambling around to see what support source can I get to the fastest. So it's a real stress relief.
Brenda, thanks. Colton, how about you? Just in terms of if you could point to one thing, what's the best thing about an ABLE account?
What's the best thing about having your own?
Account.
But what do you like the most about it?
Money.
You like to save money, but you also like to whip out your debit card. You like the access
Yeah.
for dating, right?
Debit card for you. That's good.
Great.
That was awesome. That's
Yep.
exactly what you use at the most for.
Thanks, Colton.
Yeah.
Andrew, how about you? I think I might know your answer. It might rhyme with car.
Well, I like to save from my ABLE account because what if I need tires changed on my car, or what if
Right.
my engine needs replaced?
Yeah.
I could use some of that money for it, and I also have I have some money in my drawer actually
Uh-huh.
where I live. I can probably use some of that to use for if I want to change my tires, if my engine needs replaced,
Mm-hmm.
or if something were to happen to my car. I could definitely use it for things like that.
Yeah. And Carrie, for you, if you had an ABLE account, what would be the best use of it for you? The best.
Well, for me, I would most likely use mine kind of as an in and out to pay my bills, but yet still get the tax benefit of placing the money in the account.
Mm-hmm.
As a full-time employee. Those are the types of things that
Yeah.
help us plan for our future.
Mm-hmm.
But, as I said in my testimony, $76,000 right out the door just to come home.
Yeah.
Those are the types of things that people can't afford to do. That was really a struggle for us. That was part of my motivation for getting back to work after just 3 weeks.
Right.
They said, I got a bill to pay off. We got to get going.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I was just sitting around.
Yeah.
So I felt idle. Work is very important to me. But that's probably how I would use mine, is more of an in and out for medical expenses as they come up.
Mhm. Well, and I wanted to stay with you for a question
Mhm.
that, as I mentioned earlier, we believe that if we can pass able age adjustment, as you've been advocating for, that about 6.2 million Americans would become eligible. And after you had shared your story about your injury, I guess at that time you were how old?
I was 41.
41.
I'll
And-
never forget.
Yeah. Well, and we know that there are a lot of Americans in that category.
Absolutely.
People who have those injuries.
Mhm.
I'm told that it's 18,000 spinal cord injuries each year, and most of those 18,000 are older than the age of 26.
Mhm.
So I guess you may have already answered this question by way of your testimony, but when you consider just those Americans, what's the best case for the ABLE Act for those Americans?
How do we get them
Yeah.
to sign up? Well, Brenda actually touched on this in her testimony, the fear.
Yep.
There's a general fear
Yep.
of losing other benefits that
Yep.
you can't take that chance, because for me, if I didn't have personal assistance services, I would not be able to get out of my bed.
Mhm.
I can't do that on my own. I have to have somebody else there with me. So to lose a service like that, now again, I'm able to have that through a different program in PA, in Pennsylvania, called the Act 150 program.
Mhm.
And that is unique to Pennsylvania, and allows people who are working or have a slightly higher income to have PAS benefits, where you pay on a sliding scale based
Mhm.
on your income. But to lose those benefits at the risk of this new account, where I'm told that I can save something, but what if in the end it doesn't work and I lose everything? That's the reality, I think, of what we are going to be dealing with.
Mhm.
And so I think that one of the best ways to do that is word of mouth
Mhm.
of people who are actively using this account, doing something for example, I work for a Center for Independent Living.
Mhm.
If I was able to open one, I'm going and I'm talking to my coworkers about how to do it, getting them to open them, because they are the ones that are working with other people with disabilities every day,
Mhm.
and can encourage them and let them know that it is exactly as it seems. You're not going to lose your benefits over making this investment. As big or as small as it may be, get it started.
Mhm.
But I think we need to do it by example.
Well, thanks. I know when you're advocating for this bill, you're speaking for not just folks who might be beyond the age limit, but individuals who have suffered the same injury you have. So
Absolutely.
you're being a voice for them. I want to turn back to Brenda. One of the greatest challenges for some people with disabilities is finding a home. Affordable housing is challenging for everyone, and that goes beyond the disability community, but ever more so if you are in the disability community. We're told that a 2020 study found that only 6% of apartments or homes in the United States are accessible. 6% of homes and apartments accessible in the United States of America. I say that again with emphasis. Brenda, can you tell us how you're planning to use your ABLE account to help improve your housing situation if you've used funds to make your home more accessible?
Well, as I said, it's to help me. I've used ABLE to help maintain the equipment that makes my home accessible to me.
Right.
But I just want to reiterate, when you're talking about 1 in 5 Americans with this has a disability of some sort, that 6% of homes and housing stock is woefully insufficient. When we bought our home, we looked at 32 houses in 16 months. We bought the one that I could get inside of. It still required 2 years worth of modifications. If I had had an ABLE account at that time, the time frame for those modifications would have been greatly reduced. But because I had to depend on the Office of Vocational Rehabilitation, it took 2 years for a concrete pad in our driveway and a lifting system to be installed. That was all that needed done. For people that are aware of what those things are, that should have been 6 months at the most, rather than almost 2 years. So I think having my ABLE account and being able to tell people, if you really want to help us out as a family, if you really want to help me out, if you know that I'm going through some tough health stuff right now, and if you want to help out, I tell people, use the UGift code. Throw some money in my ABLE account. I don't need flowers. I don't need cards. But what we need as a family is to increase that financial buffer we have. And it's really been, I think, a powerful thing to be able to say to people, this is how you can really make a difference.
And Brenda, you said for those home improvements, you needed a concrete pad, and what was the other thing?
I needed a lifting system put in. It's
Lifting,
called
yeah.
a Sure Hands lift. It attaches to the ceiling and picks me up and can even pick me up off the floor. But it gets me out of bed and into my chair, out of my chair and onto the toilet and into the shower. Greatest piece of equipment I've ever owned.
Yeah.
I'd like to see them become more common, but they are very expensive.
Yeah.
Hard to get.
And I think that ABLE gives people some ability to have those things, but also some very simple things. There's an 8-year-old over there in that chair who really wants to go to Disney World. It's gonna cost me some extra money to take a personal care assistant with us, to make sure that the car rental we have is accessible, to make sure that everything we need is on that trip. ABLE will be part of that. And no, Kaylin, I'm not saying it's coming next week.
Well, you're focused on that future. That's good.
Yes. And to speak to what you were saying about how to reach people, I think people really do not only have to see it from us, they have to start hearing it from financial services professionals that they encounter on an everyday basis.
Right.
You know, back when we had a retirement account where I worked, I went to our planner when I was thinking about opening my ABLE account. I would have opened it sooner, except that he said, I don't know anything about that, and your employer's not going to match. So, you're better off just using our account. It shouldn't be that way.
Yeah.
We should have the ability to do a one-time rollover of a larger amount every once in a while if, say, an inheritance comes. And financial planners need to know how ABLE works and how it interacts with other programs so that they can offer, really good advice.
Well, Brenda, thanks for that. I wanted to turn to Colton for a question about education and employment. We know that, as I made reference to earlier, the unemployment rate for people with disabilities is less than half for that of people without disabilities. We're grateful today that our witnesses here today are working, and that some of you hold multiple jobs. That's not easy. Colton, I know you've been using some of your ABLE funds to be able to prepare for and interview for jobs. Can you tell us how you've used ABLE savings to prepare for job interviews, and tell us about some of those interviews, if you don't mind?
Audition, Florida,
What did you audition for in Florida?
that's my street.
Sesame Street. And then where else have you gone?
At New York.
City?
Yeah.
And what did you audition for there?
Um, um, uh, movie.
For the Netflix show Orange is the New Black?
Wow.
And- So Pittsburgh has some performance, but you have to go to other cities all the time, right?
Yeah.
It's expensive. Where else are you headed to for the movies?
Here.
To California?
Mhm.
Colton's exhausted because of work.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say,
I got
sorry
it.
for that delay. I wanted to make sure that,
What?
but so you're planning to go to California,
Yeah.
and you've been to New York and Florida. You got a busy schedule for a college senior. But that's the reality for folks who are pursuing their career goals, their dreams.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to travel, and traveling costs money, and Colton is able to use those funds to prepare for and take advantage of those opportunities to audition. That's in essence, we all at some point in our lives are auditioning. A job interview is an audition of any kind. So we're grateful that he's willing to share that story with us. And Colton, all I can say is I don't think you're going to need luck, but I wish you luck when you go to California too. I just hope you come back to Pittsburgh at some point. We don't mind if you leave Pennsylvania for a while. We hope you come back. I wanted to turn next to a kind of a question for a number of our witnesses, for Brenda, Andrew, and Colton again, and then I'll and then I think we'll at that point probably wrap up. But as I mentioned in my opening statement, there are about 120,000 able account owners across the country that have now saved $1 billion. I'm not sure I said that, but I know I said it out in an interview walking in the door. But to have $1 billion in assets saved across the country is a significant advancement for the nation. But we want to get that number up, and we want to get the account holder number way up. So we know that those who have those accounts have a measure of financial security they wouldn't have otherwise. And we know that for some, they might be aware of ABLE, they might be aware of the opportunity, but we still hear stories about people being hesitant, reluctant, whatever the word is, to open an ABLE account. Some say that opening an account is difficult, and some are scared that their benefits will be affected. That fear that Brenda and others have spoken to still persists, even though we have an avenue or a pathway that wasn't available before under the tax law. So I wanted to ask Brenda, then Colton, and Andrew, can you talk about the experience of actually opening the account, opening an ABLE account, and if it's had any effect on your federal disability benefits? Maybe Brenda, we'll start with you.
Well, for me, it was very easy. Now, I'd had the advantage of I helped consumers open their accounts from the time the program launched. But I opened my account at 3 a.m. Couldn't sleep. I took out my iPad. I knew that a bit of a windfall was coming my way thanks to a very generous bonus from my employer. And I just went ahead and opened the account online. One of the things I think would have been less intimidating to me would have been if I could have opened an account with a bank that I was already familiar with. The limited number of providers, I think, will be a barrier for some folks. The fact that I deal with one bank for my everyday spending and another bank for my ABLE is something I'm able to manage, but a lot of people they see that as a hassle they don't want.
Having to go to
Yeah.
another bank for another part of
Right, because in Pennsylvania, only Fifth Third offers ABLE accounts. And as a lifelong PNC customer, I've had the same bank account since I was 16. It's a lot to have to manage that second relationship.
Yep.
And for some folks, that's a barrier. They're very resistant to that change.
So Brenda, I want to be clear, you were recommending that everyone open their Able account at 3 a.m.?
I recommend that everybody open their Able account as soon as they are eligible. I think it should be something that when younger folks come out of rehab, they should be given that pamphlet. They should sit down with somebody who understands it and just get it open, even if it's just $5 or $10. I waited until I had a fair amount of resources, and that was not very smart of me. I will freely admit, for all the things I'm good at in this life, I'm not good with money. I'm working to change that thanks to Able.
So that recommendation about getting that information just as you're finishing your rehabilitation is important. Huh?
Yes.
Yeah.
And also high school seniors, kids who grow up with disabilities, it should be part of their transition planning.
Yeah.
Colton, how about you?
Do you remember when we opened your account? We did it together.
Yeah.
How did we do it?
Yeah.
On the computer. I support Colton with his financial, and I know everything that Brenda said on the transition. Schools should be told about this. Colton had his first job in 8th grade at 14 and paid taxes and earned money. He should have known then. And putting it in those hands, and also a bank that actually had a branch in Pennsylvania would be a huge benefit. He currently has 3 checks that need to be deposited, and sometimes there's a delay because of just getting organized, huh?
Yeah.
So a Pennsylvania branch would be
Would be really nice. Oh, it was easy, huh? We don't have to do anything other than the computer.
Yeah.
It took minutes.
Andrew, how about you?
Well, for me,
Was it at 3 a.m.?
no,
No.
no, it was not. For me, I get PFDS waiver services, and that has not impacted my my benefits at all. I actually had enough money in my Able account to put a down payment on my Honda Civic that I mentioned, and I plan to save even more of that money, probably for an apartment down the road when I move out of my parents' house.
That's great. And that you've had the car how long?
About 2 years.
It's running pretty well.
Yeah.
That's great. We just need to get gas prices even lower, right?
Yes.
That'll be the subject of another hearing. I guess the last thing I wanted to ask about was some suggestions for others who may hear about the work we're all trying to do together. We had one of the great promoters and really the offices around the country that are implementing the ABLE Act are state treasurer's offices around the Commonwealth, or I should say around the Commonwealth, around the country, and including here in Pennsylvania. Our state treasurer, Stacey Garrity, and her team have worked to promote ABLE accounts all over the state, and are also advocating for the passage of the Able Age Adjustment Act. So that office in Pennsylvania has done a lot of outreach to inform people about these accounts. And as I said earlier, we've got almost 7,000 accounts in Pennsylvania, and we have accounts in 64 out of 67 counties, which is significant. There's 3 we don't, and we're working on all 3. But there are thousands more people that are eligible for ABLE accounts, both in our state and around the country, if we can get this legislation passed to raise that age. So I guess for all of our witnesses, maybe I'll start with Carrie. What are your suggestions for reassuring people that ABLE will not affect eligibility for federal disability benefits? And how should we encourage people to become ABLE account owners?
Sure. First of all, I have to share two secrets.
Sure.
This one's for Colton. My husband and I used to be mascots. My name was Whiplash and he was Clutch.
Wow.
So we have
great.
yep, we have that in common. That's hard work, really hard work, and good for you. And the other secret is, as Brenda again mentioned, financial services right here. That's that's the field that my husband works in. He whispered in my ear, he said, I could be telling people about this.
Do you feel like you're sufficiently informed enough to do that, Jeff?
I absolutely do. A branch manager and a mortgage lender, and I often run into people that say, I want to buy a house, but I'm not allowed to have money. And an obstacle to buy a house is you have to have a down payment and pay closing costs. So either a program that allows for no down payment, which is not likely, but something that will allow people to grow an asset to be able to spend for that. Because otherwise they're victims of whatever the landlord decides to raise the rent to.
Right, right.
And they're also stashing money.
Mm-hmm.
It's not safe to do that, but they're stashing money, some in safes and some they're taking it old school in boxes and burying it.
You heard about my water cooler bottle during my testimony, and that's where all my savings was for a very long time.
I heard nothing about that water bottle.
Yeah.
I heard absolutely nothing. But yeah, this program would help, as Jeff said, for those individuals to not be collecting it in a box
Yeah.
buried in the ground, which doesn't help them in securing a mortgage.
Mhm.
You have to have that money in the bank. And as soon as they put it in the bank, it triggers that review that's going to knock them off of their benefits.
Yeah.
And I just have to add one comment to your testimony, Carrie, and that is that even Act 150 has an asset limit. So I know that you play a shell game in making sure things get moved around properly. But having an ABLE account would remove that stress from you as well.
Absolutely. And I have a good SC, service coordinator,
Uh-huh.
that, helps me navigate that program.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else? Colton, did you want to add anything or not?
What would you tell them?
Just do it.
Just do it.
Just do it.
I've never looked back, and it
Yeah.
has not affected any benefits ever.
Maybe we could add, just do it at any time of the day, right?
Yes.
Well, let me, unless, Andrew, you have anything you want to say?
Like that you mentioned about the how the Senate and I think the passage of this act will expand eligibility for Pennsylvanians because there's a lot of them that are like in their 30s and 40s
Yeah.
that don't have ABLE at all. I think I'm gonna say I think this I think the passage of this act will expand that and expand the 3 counties that we don't have.
We may have to put you on the road. You've got a car.
Yeah.
Those 3 counties from here are a pretty good ride, but I think you could make it. Well, thanks very much. I might just want to read for the record a closing statement, but I want to start with gratitude. I can't thank our witnesses enough, and those who are working with our witnesses for today and getting here and taking the time to do this, because I could give 150,000 speeches, but that won't have the same impact as your testimony. And I'm not saying that to convey some kind of humility. It's actually the truth. The best way for us to tell the story of why it's important to pass the bill is to have you tell your stories.
Right.
And nothing is more compelling to a fellow human being than hearing another human being tell their story. All the charts and data are not nearly as persuasive and as important and meaningful as the testimony that you're providing today. So I know that you're doing this because you care about these issues, but I want you to know that you're helping your country by making the case for able age adjustment. So
Right.
we're grateful for that. And speaking of our country, in a country as prosperous as the United States of America, no one with a disability should be forced to live in poverty to provide essential benefits. No one should be forced to live in poverty. As our witnesses told us, people with disabilities are often, as Brenda said, taught to fear building wealth. No American should be taught to fear building wealth and providing savings for themselves and for their families. And thanks to ABLE accounts, that no longer is the case for millions of Americans. But we have more work to do to improve the ABLE program. So I want to thank Brenda and Carrie and Colton and Andrew for sharing their stories about what an ABLE account can help them accomplish in their lives, whether it's saving for a rainy day, paying for healthcare expenses, buying a house, buying a car, even traveling halfway across the country to Colton audition for the job of your dreams. These goals can all be supported by ABLE savings accounts. In addition to the testimony of our witnesses today, we had a number of Pennsylvanians write to us about their ABLE accounts, their own personal experience, their own testimony. I want to submit for the record 9 additional, I'm holding them up now, 9 additional statements from Pennsylvanians highlighting how they're using their ABLE accounts for everyday needs to meet their long-term goals. So we'll make these part of the record, as we say, without objection. People with disabilities have goals, they have dreams, they have ambitions, just like every other American. And we want to make sure that we provide every tool necessary, every tool, every support that we can to allow them to fulfill those dreams and to achieve those ambitions. Everyone deserves the opportunity to work and to be able to save for emergencies and future goals. ABLE gives that opportunity to 8 million people with disabilities. The Able Age Adjustment Act, the Senate bill I mentioned, Senate Bill 331, will expand that opportunity to another 6.2 million Americans, including, as I said, more than 1 million veterans. So I want to thank all the witnesses for contributing their time, and as I mentioned earlier, sharing their experiences, telling us their stories to help us pass the bill. The hearing record will remain open until Thursday, August 24th for additional statements for the record. So I want to thank you all for participating, and that will conclude today's hearing.